It was an ordinary day on the liturgical calendar, yet the sky felt restless. Above the rooftops of the Vatican, a dim light cast long shadows, as if time itself were about to exhale. The bells did not ring at their scheduled hour, not due to failure, but by choice. Inside St. Peter's Basilica, the air carried something rare, a silent anticipation like the precise moment before the final Amen. The cardinals were gathered, but not in conclave. The eyes of the world were not fixed on a decision, but on a mystery. That morning, Pope Leo XIV cancelled all appointments. No explanation, no official announcement, only one message, quietly sent to his closest aides. Today, the heart will speak where structure can no longer reach. The square was unusually full for a regular Wednesday, and yet no one knew why, as if an ancient whisper had summoned them, as if the Holy Spirit himself had gathered his invisible guests. Then he appeared. No fanfare, no protocol, no organ playing. Leo XIV entered through the side door of the basilica, walking alone, his steps slow, as if he were listening to each stone along the way. He wore white, but a lighter white, almost translucent, like one who carries both the peace and the pain of the world upon his shoulders. When he reached the altar, he did not ascend the steps, he descended. He stepped down to the marble floor, removed his zucchetto with his own hands, and knelt in silence. The Vatican's official camera, broadcasting live with no idea what to capture, hesitated, but it stayed. It stayed to witness the moment when the Pope spoke, not by uttering the name of God, but by evoking his presence through a single gesture. Leo XIV rose slowly, turned to the people and said, "The Church must return to listening, and among us there is one who never stopped hearing, even when the world shouted, even when silence became uncomfortable. That someone is Mario Grech." St. Peter's Square trembled, not with noise but with echo. The name Mario Grech was not new, but the tone with which it was spoken, felt like a gospel rewritten in tears. Leo XIV continued, "This man is not being promoted, he is being revealed, because what the world has forgotten, listening, tenderness, care, he preserved in silence." Then something unexpected happened. Leo XIV pointed toward the back of the basilica, and from there, emerging slowly between columns and mosaics, walked Mario Grech. Nothing about his appearance drew attention, and perhaps for that very reason, everything did. He wore no mitre, no ring, no aids by his side, just a simple crucifix around his neck, and eyes that had heard many sorrows, yet never stopped answering with compassion. When Grech reached the Pope, there was no kiss on the ring, no formal liturgy, only a gesture that will be engraved in eternity. Leo XIV extended his hands and held Mario Grech's face as a father holds the son who returns after a long night. No words, only the fullest silence Rome has ever heard. After long seconds, the Pope spoke, voice trembling, without a microphone. "Thank you for never stopping to listen, not even to the Church." It felt as though heaven paused to hear it. The cardinals, confused, began to weep, not because they understood, but because they felt. There, before all, Leo XIV did something unprecedented today. Before God and the Church, I do not appoint Mario Grech to a position, but I recognize him as a living symbol of listening, of communion, and of the tenderness that heals. Let all see and learn, because the future of faith begins with listening. The square went silent. The world stood still, and the Spirit, unseen, seemed to breathe like Pentecost. And so it began. Not an appointment, but a revelation. Mario Grech did not receive a title, he received a gesture, and that gesture means more than 1,000 documents. It was as if the Church was being washed in tears of tenderness. Asterisk, before he became a symbol, he was forgotten. Before he was called, he learned to be silent. And before the world recognized him, Mario Grech had already been recognized by the suffering of others. Born on the small island of Gozo in Malta, Mario did not grow up among marble columns or under golden lights. He was shaped by the wind, the same wind that crosses the valleys of the Mediterranean and carries the dust of ancient prayers. His first altar was silence. His first homily was the way he listened to the pain of the poor without interrupting. While other boys were learning Latin, Mario was listening to widows. While his classmates memorized theology, he memorized the names of the sick. And while many sought the pulpit, Grech discovered something few noticed, that the confessional can be more revolutionary than an encyclical, and that there is more truth in the eyes of the suffering than in 1,000 treatises about God ordained. A priest in a time of noise, both in the world and in the Church, Mario chose the opposite path. Where others shouted, he whispered. Where others judged, he welcomed. Where others ran to the spotlight, he knelt in the dark. His early years were spent among the forgotten. In the poor parishes of Gozo, many couldn't even pronounce his name correctly. But everyone knew that if they came to him, they would be listened to all the way to the end. Grech was never in a hurry. He listened until the other began to peer themselves too. And that, in times like ours, is almost a miracle. But it is in the invisible that God acts. Unknowingly, Mario was becoming a bridge between the laity and the clergy, between pain and comfort, between tradition and listening. and the bridge never appears in the pictures. But without it, no one crosses. In 2005, he was named Bishop of Gozo, and the reaction was curious. Mario, that quiet priest, the one who never goes up to the altar without first sitting among the people. Yes, that very one. In his first pastoral letter as Bishop Grech, didn't speak of power, doctrine, or authority. He spoke of tears. The tears of the people are the tabernacle where God hides, he wrote. And it is up to us, shepherds, not to dry them too quickly, but to welcome them first. From that point on, something began to change. Not in the structure, but in the atmosphere. Young people began returning to the church, not because they were convinced, but because they were heard. Broken families came closer, not because they heard promises, but because they found shared silence. And the priests of the diocese began to pray more calmly, because they had a bishop who called them by name, not by title. But the world still wasn't paying attention, because Mario Grech didn't show up, and that was his secret. He spoke with glances, preached through gestures, and evangelized. With time, when Leo XIV assumed the pontificate, at a critical moment in the church, one of his first quiet decisions was this: call Mario Grech. We need to learn from him before the noise suffocates him. And he was called to Rome, but he didn't occupy palaces. He lived in a simple room, without emblems, and still, every day, cardinals and bishops came to him, not to receive orders, but to be listened to. Some cried, others confessed doubts they had hidden for decades, and Grech listened to them, as if each soul were the last before judgment. During the Synod on Synodality, while many searched for complex words for simple matters, Mario said, there's no use writing documents if we don't know how to cry with the people. There's no point in creating commissions if we don't know how to listen to the wounded woman, the confused young person, the tired priest. And there, in that event where so many sought direction, he became a compass, not because he pointed the way, but because he let himself be touched by the pain of the world. It was in this context that Pope Leo XIV saw the invisible. He saw in Mario Grech something the ecclesiastical world had forgotten to value: a heart not hardened by structure, a faith that didn't need to prove itself, a humility that didn't offer itself, but allowed itself to be found. When once asked by a journalist if he dreamed of becoming a cardinal, Grech replied, "My dream is simple, that someone, one day, will say they were heard by me, and that this helped them return to God." This is Mario Grech, a man who does not shout but echoes, who does not run but remains, who does not appear but transforms. And perhaps that is why Leo XIV decided to reveal his name to the world, because the world is tired of leaders, but longing for fathers, tired of speeches, but starving for listening, tired of shouted doctrines, but seeking gestures that embrace. The church doesn't need new slogans, it needs new listening. And for that, it needs men like Mario Grech. There was a silence in that room, not an empty silence, but the silence before the thunder, before the change, before God speaks. When Pope Leo XIV mentioned the name of Mario Grech before the Roman Curia, he did not do so out of formality, nor diplomacy. He spoke it with the gravity of someone announcing a turning point, like one who opens a crack in time so that light can penetrate an old, tired body, the church, yet still alive. The decision was not strategic, it was prophetic. Before cameras from around the world, Leo XIV declared, with a firm voice and eyes weighed down by millennia of accumulated sorrow, "Today, in the face of chaos, division, and internal confusion within the church, I do not propose a document, I do not propose an administrative reform, I propose a soul, and its name is Mario Grech." These words were spoken in the oldest hall of the Vatican, but they echoed as if proclaimed from the Mount of Beatitudes. Many didn't understand it immediately. Some called it premature, others smirked with irony, but deep down, even the most skeptical knew something was happening and nothing would ever be the same. Grech wasn't promoted, he was revealed. And that makes all the difference, because we live in times where names appear in headlines, but are emptied of meaning. Times where too much is spoken and too little is heard, where priests shout from the altar, but no one listens from the sacristy. Times of technical synods and cold hearts. Times of a digital church yet analog souls, wounded and orphaned. That is the boldness of Leo XIV. He didn't give us a plan, he gave us a man, fragile, silent, steady, a man who carries more doubts than answers, but with one unshakable certainty: God still speaks. And more than that, God still listens. By elevating Mario Grech as the symbol of the church's new chapter, Leo XIV touches a point forgotten for centuries: the power of listening while the ecclesiastical world drowns in documents, directories, and codes. Grech listens. He listened to priests on the verge of quitting. He listened to mothers who lost children to addiction. He listened to couples unsure if God still heard them. He listened to theologians in crisis, and he did not respond with dogma, but with presence. His theology is one of listening, and that, as Saint Benedict once said, is the highest form of obedience, because to listen is to allow oneself to be affected. Leo XIV understood this, and that's why, instead of releasing a new PayPal document, He is launching what he calls the revolution of silence, a revolution not taking place in Vatican offices, but in forgotten parishes, in dusty sacristies, in silent confessions, in hearts that still beat, even when they are not heard, in an internal speech not televised but leaked days later. The Pope reportedly said, if the Church wishes to survive the 21st century, it must fall silent, and listen deeply. Listen to those who abandon the faith, listen to those we have wounded, listen to the muffled cries of ignored women, dismissed youth, invisible poor. And for that we don't need strategy. We need a man who listens as if he hears God himself in each person. That man is Mario. Those words struck the cardinals like lightning. Some felt relief, others fear. But all understood, the era of spiritual bureaucracy was coming to an end. In the months that followed, Grech began to travel, not as an ambassador, but as a pilgrim. He visited parishes, sat with bishops in crisis, spoke with both conservative and progressive theologians, and, more than anything, he listened to victims of abuse, of neglect, of the Church's complicit silence. And in every encounter he would simply say, the Church has no right to speak until it listens first. Asterisk. In a discreet ceremony, Leo XIV declared, Mario Grech's mission is not to command, it is to remind the Church of who she is. Not a fortress, but a tent, not a castle, but a home, not a courtroom, but a hospital. And this remembrance is what may heal the wounded soul of the institution. Today, many expect Mario Grech to be officially appointed to higher offices, but he does not want it. He has already turned down the title of permanent president of pontifical structures. Twice he prefers to serve as he always has, kneeling in silence, with his ear inclined toward the hearts of the forgotten. And that is why he means so much, because while the world demands efficiency, he offers listening. While systems cry out for speed, he offers patience. While culture demands ready answers, he remains in the mystery. Perhaps this is Pope Leo XIV's greatest teaching in times of crisis. What we need is not more noise. It is someone who, like Mario Grech, dares to listen with a bare heart, without defenses, without formulas, only with faith. And perhaps, the Church doesn't need another council, but another kind of listening. Radical listening, maternal listening, divine listening. And this is the true miracle that began with a simple phrase, call Mario. Sometimes, the history of the Church is not written with golden quills, nor proclaimed from the altars. Sometimes, it is whispered, in the silence of a sacristy, in the solitude of a confessional, in the restrained tear of a weary priest, or in the final prayer of a forgotten sick soul. And it is in that whisper that Mario Grech became a milestone, not because he created doctrines, nor because he gained titles, but because he chose not to be heard so that he could listen, not to be great so that he could serve, not to be remembered so that others might be saved. He made himself disappear, and in that disappearance he shone at the monastery of Subiaco, where Saint Benedict began the movement that preserved the faith during the fall of the empire. There is a small inscription in stone, Silla ut intelliges, be silent, so that you may understand. That phrase, lost to time, seems to have been etched into Grech's soul. And it is that phrase that today inspires a generation of young priests who, contrary to expectations, do not seek power, prestige, or pulpits. They want to listen, they want to heal, they want to stay. And all of that began with a simple choice. Leo XIV's choice of a man who never asked to be chosen. Mario never needed to defend himself because he never placed himself at the center. When he was criticized, he remained silent. When he was praised, he redirected the spotlight. When asked about his plans, he calmly replied, my plan is to have no plan. It is to follow where the Spirit leads me, and he blows where he wills. To some, that sounds like weakness, but saints have always been misunderstood by technicians. As the years passed and he grew older, Grech refused the idea of a biography, but he allowed a young seminarian to accompany him. No filming, no publishing, only to bear witness. The only condition: whatever you write, do not praise me, would speak of the people God allowed me to listen to. The book was never published. It rests in a simple wooden drawer in a convent in Malta, but there's a note stuck to the cover. If someday someone wants to understand why the Church did not die in this century, start here. And that is why today, even without official positions, Mario Grech is a name whispered in retreats, seminaries, and silent vigils around the world, not for his eloquence, but for his listening. And that is how true names become eternal, not in documents, but in souls. Leo XIV's decision was more than strategic. It was poetic. It was scandalous to those who expected power. It was liberating to those who longed for God. And now, the prophecy is being fulfilled, not in high places, but at the roots, in restless hearts, in tired priests, in forgotten nuns, in thirsty people. A flame is being lit, slowly, deeply, irreversibly, and the name of that flame is not an ideology. It is not a movement. It is simply this, listening. In the silent corridors of the Vatican, some say that Leo XIV has already chosen his successor, but not with documents, with gestures. And perhaps In the future, when we look back, we will not remember dates or synods or decrees, but we will remember a gaze, a pause, a deep silence in the face of suffering. And that silence had a name: Mario. If you've made it this far, it's because you feel that something is stirring, something beyond the headlines, beyond church politics, beyond scandals and divisions. You feel that the soul of the church is being called back, and that soul listens. Don't let that call fade. Share this video. Write in the comments, I'm ready to listen. Subscribe to follow the next chapters of this invisible yet real story. Because, as Leo XIV himself reminds us, the Holy Spirit does not shout, he whispers, but only those who are silent can hear.